Man, brought to you by Variance Magazine. I'm your host, Ethan Ijumba, and today I'm joined by an artist whose sound is fluid as it is fearless, from working with icons from Billie Eilish, Khalid, John Legend, attracting praise from the likes of Taylor Swift, John Mayer. Today, I've got the pleasure to talk about everything from the making of his project, The Hours. Ladies and gents, this is Cautious Clay. How are we doing today?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
Doing good, doing good. So, just to get right into it, you described The Hours plays like a time capsule of the early day, and the way you structured it has 7 a.m., 8 a.m., and different hours of the day. What inspired you to structure the project in this way, like an hour by hour setup? Because we've seen Act 1, Act 2s, or Chapter 1, Chapter 2s. What exactly was the idea behind making it based on time instead?
I honestly feel like time has always been something that, I mean, we're all subject to time, right? But I think people have different routines or kind of different experiences based on what they do on an everyday basis. And I find that to be fascinating. Obviously, a lot of people have like a 9 to 5 or like sort of like this routine, but I found it interesting to try to approach music in that way because in a lot of ways, I think that like people kind of consider music something that they can kind of look to for like peace and compassion. And so I think it felt like an interesting practice to be able to make something that could essentially like like I could make it feel aligned with time in this kind of like linear way, but like each hour sort of having a particular feel to it. You know what I'm saying? Like I think like for me, it's always just like every hour of the day has a distinct feeling. I don't think that's maybe for everyone, but for me, that's kind of been the case. And I felt like it would be interesting to try to like think about not only sonically and aesthetically what it could feel like, but then also, you know, in some cases lyrically, like there's like the song No Champagne where I literally say 6 a.m. in the song. So it's a varying degree of elements to it that I find to be sort of different. And I don't know, like I hadn't really seen anyone do something like that. So I felt like it would be interesting to align with, it'd be interesting. I thought it'd be interesting to essentially make something that felt obviously subjective and then make an objective stance on it where it's like, this is what 6 a.m. sounds like, or this is what, you know, 5 a.m. sounds like, even though that's going to be different for everybody.
And then based on the concept of where you came up with it, how you use time as the main focal point and the muse behind the entire project, one of the biggest things I think that you tend to do with it is the genres itself don't have a specific genre. You do a great job at seamlessly blending different styles of music from jazz, R&B, hip hop, pop, soul as well too. And it's you create no box for yourself, which is major kudos to how you do it. But when it comes down to this project, was there any specific inspiration or influences of how exactly you wanted to navigate the direction of how you make this one? Because from your debut to what you have now, we've seen you go into a lot of different like forms of music and a little different stylistics of it. But what exactly was it for this one that really influenced it in terms of just the instrumentation and the sonics level?
That's a good question. I think I was like kind of trying to draw from kind of like classic sort of songwriting, if that's like, I don't know, just like sort of like classic productions, classic sort of like approaches to so like, and I've said this before in other interviews, so this isn't a novel thing at all. It's I've always found it really cool to have songs where similar to either like a basketball team or like some sort of a sports team or even just like a team in general where each member of the group has a part and the part is defined. So, you know, like the guitar part, for example, in Father Time is very defined. There's like a part, you hear the part throughout the song, you know, or for No Champagne, the guitar part is very defined. Each section you can hear clearly. And so when I approach music and songwriting in this process, I would say that I'm drawing a lot from that as a main focal point for the writing process, because there's obviously this pop element to it, more so in this project. I think contextually also, like I'd say like in some cases, there's an element of like kind of like classic rock or in some cases, or like the drums are a little bit heavier as well. But I'd say throughout the project, it's like there's an element of consistency with sort of like, okay, here you can sort of hear the drums, the bass, the guitar. And if there is any synths that are kind of added, you could sort of, they're kind of like almost interspersed with those three elements of drum, bass, and guitar. I think those are usually kind of like the approaches that I took throughout this.
Speaking on that, you are in the world that we all live in, but as a black artist, there is a lot of different labels that they put upon you because you don't make a traditional R&B or hip hop or rock project necessarily to give you high praise, but it's going to sound like almost in a negative, but I mean this in a positive way because you make good music. You don't make something that would necessarily be nominated for a BET award.
Yeah,
With no disrespect to that, it's just
yeah.
because that's such a specific traditional box of how they put it into.
No, for sure. I'm not gonna like you like dance for your granny like with a rose in my hand like
It,
that.
exactly.
You know what I'm saying? But
Yes,
like,
of course.
yeah.
But how is it to feel from the outside looking in, or I guess you're technically you're one on the inside in this case, when you're in the separate category of artists that do something in such a non-traditional way, and then you see a lot of different audience reception to it. Like, what exactly is it like for you, for how you are as an artist? Because it's not the same. If you were a completely different skin tone or skin color, it's a different label, it's a different box for some reason. But what is it like for you in that position?
Yeah, I mean it's pretty that's a great question. I'd say it's very it was very concerning for me at one point. I think now I've kind of just like moved on and accepted that that's just the case, but I think even when I first started and like into like the first 2 or 3 years of my process, I felt a little bit like I certainly felt a little overlooked because I was just like, okay, like I can certainly do a lot of different things and I feel like I was aware of like the different things that I was doing. But I definitely think people just kind of look at me as like this talented guy that's like, you know, plays a lot of instruments, which is great. I mean, that's certainly it. But I think my writing and like my perspective and even my productions are very unique. And so the fact that I'm not necessarily like I don't know I definitely like maybe am attractive to some people, but I'm certainly not like, oh my god, like this guy's super hot and he does all this stuff, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like I think that like how I'm perceived in that world or in that space might have been different if I did look a certain way, right? I'm not saying I'm not thankful or that like those circumstances, I mean, you can never truly predict what's
Yeah,
going to
of
happen. So
course.
I don't think it's like that's the answer, but I definitely do think that there's a particular element to the simplicity of there's an element to like if I just decided to be a little bit more simpler with my messaging, maybe I could have like fit into a different mold or like or maybe if I did have a certain look, I could have it would have all just been an afterthought and they would have just like, well, he's really hot, so we'll just like do this, right? So it's hard because there's so many different examples and it's hard to also say that like, oh, that's the answer as to why I'm in the position that I'm in. I still feel like I have a lot more to give artistically and I don't ever try to make an excuse for why something is working the way it is or not. But of
Like
course,
you're not
like
going to reinvent the wheel, things
no,
like that.
no,
Yeah.
I don't. So I'm not gonna just be like as simple as like, oh, because I'm a black man, like my music is like not more popular. You know, that's a ridiculous statement. But I do think that there's an element of like marketability that is factored into any type of, you know, and also just like vanity and voyeurism that I maybe am not participating in because I just don't like I understand what I have to do as an artist to be like, oh, I'm marketing to you, right? But there's certain elements of that I find to be pretty vapid and ridiculous, and I don't necessarily think that that's the end goal to create something that's popular. I've seen it happen for many different people who don't participate in that way.
You're not chasing virality at the end.
No, no. I mean, there's elements of virality that have occurred in my career, obviously, but like I find that chase to be exhausting and daunting and not necessarily something that's sustainable. I mean, you know, I've done multiple sold out tours, you know, and have, you know, built up somewhat of an audience that was there for me without massive virality, you know, like I think that that would be great. Certainly would help, but you know, I can't not be myself. Like I'm going to participate in the ways that I feel comfortable, but like I just don't think it would be
Going to be
I don't think it would
genuine.
do any justice either way at
Yeah.
this point in my career. So,
And speaking on that, of how you go about how you operate and navigate throughout your career with the music you make and how it's very down to the detail for a lot of different artistic standpoints from how you create and compose your music and how you release it and exactly the meaning behind it. When it came down to this project, considering how you said it's like a time capsule and how everything has a story to it, when it came down to telling that story, you have a lot of different themes that go through this. We have love songs, we have songs just about being the person you could have always been. You also have like almost like a coming of age kind of essence to it off the songs like Traffic and Tokyo Lift. What exactly was the essential meaning that you wanted to basically put out there for the listeners when you came down to creating and composing these songs?
I mean, I wanted to really relate it to time in the sense of like things that you might be doing at that time, right?
Okay.
Like that was really I didn't have like this grandiose theme. I think particularly with my last album before this, Carpe, like that was a very deeply personal album about my family and just like the roots of that. But I think with this, I wanted to kind of just liken it to just different things that people are, yeah, going to a karaoke bar, like sleeping in with a significant other, taking a smoke break with someone that you're kind of into. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, so I wanted to make it a little bit more I don't I hate the word relatable because it's not what I mean, but I wanted to make it a little bit more just like the
Details
experience.
of the human condition,
Yeah, yeah, the
something that
details
resonates
of
more.
like just people, what people like who go through life. I guess that is relatable because it's just like what we go through every day. So it felt like it was a much easier way to approach something that already had so many restrictions. Like it's like, okay, we're gonna make a song about 9 a.m. Like, so we don't wanna I just didn't want to like get too heady with it. I just wanted it to feel like cool. This is something that, I would picture at this time, whether it's like from a sonic perspective or like lyrically, it's like I'm literally just taking a smoke break.
And then in comparison to your last album, you said how this one's more simplistic. It's just pretty much making music that isn't as deeply personal. You're just creating sounds that you enjoy for the listeners to have still enjoy the concept of time, like you said. But then comparing us in comparison to your last album of how it was more of a deep, personal, just emotional depth of what you were trying to give to the listeners when creating it. Did it feel easier when doing so? Because for some people, it's if they have a lot of emotion and a lot of pain, it can be cathartic for them to just put everything into lyrics and just let the listener listen to it and create that kind of sound. But sometimes when it just comes to creating a song that's about a certain topic they may not be familiar with or never done before, they can find more struggle in that. So, was either one more complex than the other when creating more deeply personal music, or just songs that were just based on a concept of what you had for this one?
I think that they're not one isn't more difficult than the other. I think it just one requires just a little bit more detail around. Well, no, I'd say that they're very similar in my head. I think that like the experiences of my family, my grandparents, for example, like that the whole album is really about like the multi generations of like my family and just, juxtaposing that to like, experiences that I've had in relationships in, a multitude of ways. I think that like there's an element of speaking to something that I love about like there's an element again that I feel like is a very distinct part of my writing where I feel like I always try to be conversational. Like I try to like set the scene when I'm writing something. It's like I'm trying to create a place where it's like, oh, someone hears that and they're like, oh, okay. They're at a bar. Okay, they're like in this location. They're in this house and you can sort of gather a little bit of information from that feels personal and is personal, but it's like, maybe people put something personal onto that, if that makes sense. It's like for me, Carpe was extremely personal because I know the depth of what I was saying. But like that depth can also be interpreted by people in different ways if it's like they wouldn't know anything about my grandmother. You know what I mean?
True.
So I think that there isn't really a difference. It's more just for the artist, like what, for me, I guess it's more for me that I know the depth of that conversation that's being had as opposed to like the listener who probably doesn't. Maybe they do because they have heard me talk about it, but I think that's the main difference. It's not really in the writing itself. It's more in just how the writing is interpreted by the listener.
And then to further speak on that, when it comes down to how you go about and approach your writing for this project, were there any specific habits or routines that you did that helped shape what you were creating? Because some people, when you just, I shouldn't say some people, but some artists, when they have a concept that they're trying to put out, or how they try to sequence it, or how they try to order a track listing, or what exactly they're trying to take their creativity and putting it into something, into art. Is there anything specific that you do or that you did differently when creating this project at all?
Well, I think my life is always changing regardless of what I'm doing. I spent a lot of time just kind of creating routines for myself that would just go about like my daily life. Just like I played a lot of basketball and I painted quite a bit this past year. Like painting was a massive part of my everyday. So I didn't necessarily have routines for my writing process. It's not like I'm like tuning my guitar before every, session or like writing thing. It's more about certain things that I know I can rely on and look forward to outside of the work that I'm doing that is music. Because like I think that I'm privileged enough to be in a position where like music is my work. It's not my job. And so I try to kind of come into it in that way where it's like, okay, I'm working now and like it requires focus, it requires energy to do that. And so I just try to give it that just due when I can. And I'm obviously losing focus. Everyone's always losing focus at different times. It's like harder than ever to do so nowadays. But like I think that like I try to just build in habits that I know I can rely on every single day that are just like things that I know will make me comfortable. Because yeah, the work of music for me is yeah, it's something I love to make. It's something I get excited about, but there's certainly elements of it that are pretty like, okay, I have to just get this done, sometimes, I think that's something that people might not think about or talk about a lot, but it's still work, even though it's fun.
And then before we wrap up out of here, this is going to be a pretty deep ended question. But when it comes down to what you spoke about, how you enjoy to love to make music, and that it's basically something that it has to get done, but it's still something your love for it will always overpower just whatever it is that comes with the struggles and complications of composing it and the anything that comes from with it. But what exactly does it for you as an artist that makes you really continue want to keep it as a continuous path of something that you really felt that no matter what, if it paid the same, you would still do it nonetheless regardless? But what about it that just outweighs it? Is it just the touring aspect? Is it the enjoyment of songwriting? Is it just the overall production? Is it playing just even the simplicity of the instruments? For some people, there's a lot of different aspects. Some people just love even hearing layer stack of just different vocals that bring love for that. But what is it for you that makes you feel that me in your position as an artist is worth continuing because of these certain aspects or these certain specifics of when it comes down to creating music?
Man, it's hard to put into words, honestly, because music is breathing inside of me. Like it's really just so part. It's such a deep part of my experience as a human being. So regardless of like the apps or whatever the hell people are into, like I know my worth in that capacity is tremendous. And so I keep going. Like I don't know. I love it so much, and I didn't start it to be like even in the position I'm in. I would like. I think I wanted to just have a career as a musician or as a some sort of a creator, because that's genuinely where it's coming from. I think I was blessed with a voice that people love, but I have a lot more to offer than just my voice. So I think that that's also just it's to me it's just something that I can't. It's just so fluid. I have so many different perspectives and thoughts that are constantly running through my head even without like quote unquote working. You know what I'm saying? Because I think that like the work I'm talking about is really just in the capacity of finishing things. And that's been a big part of my career because I was an independent artist. Like I still am very much independent in how I move and how I go go throughout my creative process. It really finishes with me, even to this day. I'm the person often mixing it. I'm definitely the main producer on almost all of it.
The DIY, basically. Yeah. Very
Still
DIY.
I'm still very DIY. It's hilarious to even say that. But yeah, like even with all these hundreds of millions of streams, it's just like it's hard to find people that you trust, but then also just like people who are available. People are always just, and that's also like, so I just, again, I think from the capacity of being a creative, music is just always will be there, regardless of like whatever is going on in my career, whatever I'm trying to accomplish. It just courses through my body in a way where I might not like certain aspects of
Say it.
the yeah, of the music industry.
There it is. It's a
Uh,
safe space. Don't worry.
I definitely don't like a lot of aspects of it, but I think that the actual making is something that is so sacred and spiritual, and I believe in deeply. I just think that it gets clouded. It gets clouded, and
I mean,
it just kind of gets kind of tarnished. But
to
again,
what
I'm
extent
not.
have you seen changes
Yeah.
though? Like we have seen the industry get better for artists in some cases because there's been a
No, this isn't.
exploitations.
No, this isn't. Yeah, 100%. I think I'm more just like speaking to the idea that I'm a student of the game. You know what I'm saying? Like I know a lot of music, and there are also a lot of people who don't, and that's fine. But I think that like there's an element of like appreciation and also understanding and ethnomusicology that like I just love that shit. Like I love that. I also love like the making, and so I just have a lot of respect for so many aspects of it that I think aren't always considered, regardless of. But I think you're right. I think there's a lot more autonomy for artists these days, and I think that's really beautiful. So again, I have no problem with that. I think it's just continuing to create and find inspiration and produce and write.
And power to you though. Like I think that your journey has been one of the most amazing to witness for how you've gone as an artist. We've seen you do so many things great independently, and with the streams that you have, honestly, just shows numbers that the music you make doesn't need to be a product of some grand corporation or scale or scheme of any sort. Like you making the genuine, honest, and heart driven music that you make is still like what people are still going for. And I think a major prop to you that how you go about creating what you create, it's always appreciated and detailed from things you did on this project, from the saxophone solo on Traffic. I thought was amazing how you did that, or how the storytelling influence that you have in all these different songs. Like you really do incorporate such detailed and intricate levels of music for like the average listener or the either major listener to enjoy, even someone that's just like I like music might be a background thing for them. But I
Yeah,
think for the people that are very invested and very, very interested in how you put down what you put down and why you put it down, all those little levels of they all mean something. I think you do a great job at just emphasizing the importance of it and just showcasing it in your music as well too.
thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Of course, of course.
It's really sweet.
I appreciate you for being on here, man. It was a great, great pleasure speaking with you. Amazing conversation. Just to overall listen to what you have to say. This project is amazing, also, by the way, with how you have it. Hope to see more from it for the next installments. And thank you again for joining us on Unpopular Demand today, Cautious.
Thanks, Ethan. Appreciate you, man.
Of course.
Take it easy.
Likewise.